Welcome to Safest Family on the Block. When you need to learn how to shoot, you find a gun instructor. When you need to learn how to fight, you find a self-defense instructor. When you need to learn how to talk compassionately and passionately with our kids, we talk to Dr. Carla Manly, psychologist and author, who's here to tell us today everything she's learned about talking to our kids, even when it's hard, even when it's scary. She's an important person to listen to, so let's get to it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Safest Family on the Block, where knowledge is power. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is Dr. Carla Marie Manly. How are you, Doctor?
I am really great. Thank you for asking.
Well, I'm so excited to have you here. Folks, Dr. Manly, she interviewed me for her show just a couple days ago, and she is such an excellent resource on one of the most important topics that we discuss on my channel and in the book about communication with the people we love. And so I just couldn't help bring her on the show. Now, Doctor, I know why you're awesome, but not all my viewers know why you're awesome yet. So could you tell us a little bit about why you're awesome and what you do?
I'm a clinical psychologist, practice in the state of California. And what makes me awesome? Well, I've written 4 books. Joy from Fear is my first one. And then I go through various books until my most recent one, which is The Joy of Imperfect Love. So I feel really blessed to do what I do to support other people in making their lives feel really good and work through issues in relationships, work through issues with anxiety. Anxiety is a big one. And what I've really found that is just so incredible, that imperfection, that when we accept that we are all imperfect, that we don't have to try to be perfect, that we just can try to baby step and be our best selves. When part of that is what we'll be talking about today, is learning healthy communication, because it's not something that we're born with. We learn communication based on what was modeled at home. And in many cases, that wasn't the most emotionally intelligent, high functioning type of communication. So I think what makes me most awesome is how much I love people, how much I try to help people live, good lives, and how much I try really hard to accept my imperfection and embrace my authenticity.
I think that's a really great place to start when we talk about communicating with our kids about accepting our imperfections.
Mhm.
As parents, especially if we started with with homegrown babies that turned into infants, there's a 6 or 7 or 8 year period there where we're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, where we are absolute man, superwoman, all of those things to our children. And it can be tempting to try to maintain that ineffable, I'm blanking on the word, ineffable, immutable, infallible. That's the word. The
Mm.
infallibility viewpoint that our children have. But in fact, there's so much power and so many opportunities in admitting when we make mistakes to our kids and apologizing. I think that'd be a great place to start about what thoughts you have on that.
Thank you. And I think it's so normal. Child psychology, developmental psychology show us that a child naturally needs to see mom, dad, caregiver, whoever's there as Superman, Superwoman, woman, because they don't have the ability to protect themselves. They just don't have that. And so as they learn that mom and dad, whoever the caregivers are, if the parent continues to try to be perfect, that child then learns that they have to be perfect in order to be loved and accepted. So when caregivers, and I'll just call it parents for the purposes of today's podcast, when parents learn that one of the most important gifts they can give to a child is authenticity, to say when they're scared, when they are
Hello,
uncertain, when they don't
Jason.
know,
Again,
that
sorry to
it's
keep you waiting there. I
okay
realized
not
at the
to
last second I
know.
needed to change my
And that
shirt.
doesn't mean you're imperfect. What you are doing in
No
all of these
worries.
cases is
Had a
modeling for your
Somebody
child,
advised me that when I
whatever
wear shirts
age
with
they
words on them,
are,
it's distracting to the
that
viewer.
it's
So
okay to not know, that that's a
It's
natural part of
interesting
life.
how
And
our
the flip
brains
side of
go to
not knowing
patterns.
is that you get
yeah,
to learn
I don't know what just
together, you
happened.
get
My
to
video
explore,
just
and that
abandoned
it's
me.
not about perfection.
Well, doctor,
because that's
what would you say
actually
about
why
abandonment
my
issues from your
title
yeah.
in my
No.
book, or worked with the publisher to find
Okay.
the right title. But
My
I was
entire wardrobe
set on
consists of
imperfect love.
t-shirts with nerdy jokes on
Why?
them that
Because
I
we
get for my birthday
expect
from my
our
son,
parents to love us
and
perfectly.
form-fitting Henley shirts that I
We
get for my
expect
birthday
our
from my
kids
wife.
to love us perfectly in return.
Or should I say for my wife?
Sometimes we
Either way.
expect our partners to love us
Oh,
perfectly.
I didn't know you're
And we're
not together
computers.
anymore.
Oh no,
Even
we
computers
absolutely
don't
are.
get it
Absolutely.
right. But
No,
you've
for
been
my wife.
involved. So
I think the
that when
gifts
we
they're
teach
for me,
children
but I think
that
they're
by
to her
saying something
benefit.
like,
Oh,
he
got
doesn't
it.
have that
Okay.
answer.
Okay.
I've
Wanna look it
outsourced
up
my
with
wardrobe
me?
because
Or,
I'm bad at it.
oh, I see that you brought the
Alrighty,
pancakes
so
you
it's
were
gonna be a
making
whole lot
for
like
Dad. That's
the other day.
okay.
I'm gonna
Let's figure
introduce
out
you
what
briefly,
happened
give you a
here.
chance to tell everybody why
And
you're
so
awesome, and then
taking that kind of
we'll just
not
have a nice
top-down
informal
approach,
conversation.
but a
Excellent. I
you've
just
seen
want
an
you to.
together
Yeah.
approach.
You're
Because
not
what
alone. My
kiddos
husband,
want,
his
and you know
wardrobe
this,
is
that what kids want most
with shirts.
and it's why I
It
work from an
is
attachment
T-shirts from his
perspective.
guy friends.
They want
and
attunement.
work button downs
The
from
material
me in all
things are
shapes.
fine. That's
Those are
all
his
good,
two
whatever.
things: the guy
But
friend
if a
T-shirts
child has
and then
loads
the
of
wife.
material
So
things
yes,
and they don't
it's
have a parent
it's a thing.
looking them
Yeah.
in the eyes, listening, paying attention.
Excellent. You've seen an
That's
episode
where
or two of the
we
show,
get
so I
it
think you
wrong.
have a
Parents
pretty good
most
idea of
often.
how
Been
it
there,
is.
done that.
Very, very much like your show.
Yeah, I think we all have.
And so I'll just do a quick moment
Most
of silence
of
so I
Western
know where to start
society now
editing
lives in
later.
a
Introduce you
state of
briefly, and
severe
we'll
time
just
famine.
get to it.
Mhm.
Any
And
questions
so,
before?
but taking that time to
None.
solve the problems
Excellent.
together.
All right.
My great grandfather used to have a line that he'd use of just,
Hello,
hey, you know
everybody,
what?
and welcome to
I
Safest
don't
Family
know.
on the Block, where knowledge
But
is
give me a week
power.
and we'll
I'm
both
your
know.
host, Jason, and joining me
And-
today is Dr.
And I
Carla
like,
Marie
Jason,
Manly.
that
How
you
are
brought
you,
up the
Doctor?
time famine.
I am
Because
really great. Thank you
I
for
find
asking.
myself, my husband
so
gets into
excited to
that
have you
same
here.
thing where we're
Folks,
so busy, we're so busy.
Dr. Manly,
Yet,
she interviewed
what
me for her
we
show just a
want
couple
to
days ago,
realize
and
is that we
she is such
all
an
have
excellent
24
resource
hours
on
in
one
a
of the most
day.
important
All get the
topics
same
that
amount of
we
time.
discuss on my
And
channel
some
and in the
people
book
really do to
about
make ends meet. They
communication with
need to
the people
work
we
2
love.
jobs, 3
And
jobs
so I just
to
couldn't
get that.
couldn't help bring her on the show. Now,
I've done
Doctor,
that.
I know why
I've been
you're
in
awesome,
those spaces. So what
but
we have to
not
do
all
is
my
have
viewers know why you're
compassion
awesome
for
yet. So could you tell us
ourselves
a little bit about why
and
you're awesome and what you do?
realize that a lot of
I'm
our
a clinical
time in
psychologist,
between
practice in the state of
musts
California.
of life,
And
what we must
what
do
makes me
is then
awesome?
discretionary
Well,
time.
I've written
And
4
instead of
books.
trying
Joy
to
from Fear is my
multitask
first
and think
one,
we
and then
need
I
to
go
do
through various
everything.
books until
It's
my
better
most
to
recent one,
spend 5
which is The
minutes
Joy of
focused
Imperfect
attention
Love.
with
So
that kiddo,
I feel really
listening to their
blessed
day,
to do
reading
what I
a
do,
book,
to
even if it's
support
5
other
minutes.
people
When you're
in
all
making their
in,
lives feel really
kids
good.
notice, just like
and
we notice when a partner
work through
when they're
issues,
distracted, if they're
relationships,
making eye contact with us, really
anxiety.
all
Anxiety
into
is
a
a
story
big
we're
one.
telling.
And what
or a
I've really
problem we're sharing,
found
that
we
is
know
just
when
so
someone's
incredible.
there.
That
So when we
think of it
imperfection,
as
that
a
when we
time
accept
famine,
that we are
then
all
we tend
imperfect,
to
they can
that we
blame,
don't
shame,
have
and
to
try to be
even
perfect.
some
We just
lack of
can try to
accountability can
baby
step into
step
the room
and
be our
Yeah.
best
instead of
selves, pulling it back
part
in
of that
and
is
say,
what
"Wait
we'll
a
be
second."
talking about
I've talked to
today.
so many
Is
parents who say, "Well, I
learning
find
healthy
myself in the
communication
bathroom
because
hiding
it's
and
not
catching up on my
something that
social
we're
media
born
for
with.
45
We learn
minutes."
communication
And
based on
you
what
need
was
to
modeled at home.
maybe
And
just
in many
take 15
cases,
minutes
that
and
wasn't
really enjoy
the
it
most
with where
emotionally
everybody
intelligent, high
is,
functioning
make that a
type
thing.
of
You all get
communication.
15
So
minutes
I think
together
what makes
and then
me
spend the next
most
half
awesome
hour.
is
So
how
it's not
much
because
I
stolen
love
time.
people.
Yeah.
And I'm
much
not
I
shaming or
try to
blaming,
help
but
people
stolen
live,
time never
good
quite
lives
feels
and
as
how much
good
I try
as when
really
we
hard
claim
to accept my imperfection
Absolutely.
and
Now,
embrace my
and that's
authenticity.
very similar to some advice I give.
I think that's a really
Safest
good
Family
place
on
to
the
start
Block is my
when we
newer
talk about
program. I'm
communicating
still
with our
trying to
kids
figure out
about
how to
how to
monitor
monetize
imperfections.
it.
So I'm paying the bills
As
with my
parents,
freelance writing
especially if
career still.
we started with
And I speak at a lot of
with
conferences
homegrown
about that,
babies that
and
turned
one
into
of the pieces of
infants.
advice I give
There's a
there
6 or
is
7
if
or
people
8
aren't
year
meeting their
period
writing
there where
goals,
we're 10-foot tall.
give yourself permission to set lower
we are
goals.
absolutely.
If it's not going to work
for you right
Superwoman, all of
Yeah,
those things to
that's
our children.
just- If you can't find an hour to
it
write for
can
15
be
minutes.
tempting to try to
If you
maintain
can't write while your
that
parents are visiting for the holidays,
ineffable,
take an intentional vacation instead of
I'm
consistently
blanking on the word,
failing at the
ineffable,
goals you set for
immutable.
yourself.
Give yourself
Infallible, that's the
permission
word.
to just
You take the 10 minutes for
fallibility
you and the 10 minutes for your kid
viewpoint that our children
and
have.
then the
But
next
good for the
fact,
quality time is
there's
cooking
so
dinner
many,
together.
there's so much
You
power
know,
in so many
finding the way
opportunities
to
in
do it. admitting when we make
Absolutely.
mistakes
And
to our kids and
sometimes when we're
apologizing. I
in
think that'd be a
it,
great
we
place to
can't
start
see it.
about
We
what
can't
thoughts you
see
have
it.
on that.
So, listening to what other
And I think
people
it's
have
so
to
normal.
say, getting
Child
feedback,
psychology, developmental
being
psychology
open
show
to
us
doing
that
it
a child
differently because we
naturally
all
needs
can
to
get into
see
those
mom, dad,
grooves,
caregiver,
that
whoever's
highway
there
that just
as
takes us
Superman,
to what we know and what's
Superwoman,
familiar,
because
and
they
getting
don't
out
have
of
the
that.
ability to protect
Sometimes we just need to
themselves. They
nudge
just don't
ourselves a
have
bit,
that.
or allow
And
ourselves
so
to be
as they
nudged.
learn that mom
Absolutely.
and dad,
I'm working with the
whoever the
verbal judo
caregivers
people
are,
on a project, and
if
one
the
of their
parent
things
continues
that
to
they
try
talk
to
about in their
be
trainings is,
perfect,
like you
that
talked about, the
child then
modeling, where our
learns
first
that
model is our
they
parents,
have
which
to be
may or may not be
in order to
appropriate.
be loved
And
accepted.
for the first 12 years,
So
probably isn't
when
appropriate for how you
caregivers, and I'll just
communicate with
call it
adults
parents for
anyway.
the purposes of
And then our
today's
second model is in
podcast,
school, which
when
is,
parents learn that one
I
of the
absolutely respect
most
teachers, but it is
important
a
gifts
weird
they
little
can give
bottle
to a
environment.
child
Most of the habits that
is
make you successful for there
authenticity.
are also not appropriate
To
to how
say
you treat
when
adults and how
they're
you treat your own
scared, when
children.
they are uncertain, when they
And
don't
then, by the
know
time,
that
we're
it's
in our 20s, by the
okay
time we're
not to
actually starting
know.
to
And that
see
doesn't
and
mean you're
participate in
imperfect. What
healthy
you're
adult
doing in all of
communication.
these
So we've got this
cases
20-year
is
backlog
modeling for your
of
child,
bad habits
whatever age they
around
are,
communication and around
that
mutual
it's
respect
okay
to
to
overcome. And
not
I'm sure you
know, that
encounter
that's a
this all
natural
the
part
time. I
of
was curious if
life.
you
And
had
the flip
some
side of
advice
not
about how
knowing
to
is
how
that
to
you
best
get to
overcome
learn
that, and
together.
also
You get to
how to
explore,
maybe, especially
and that
once our
it's
kids hit
not
those
about
teenage years,
perfection,
how to maybe
because
start
that's actually
training
why
them
I
so
went to
they only have a
titled
10-year
my fourth
backlog to
book, or worked
overcome.
with the publisher to find the right title, but I was
Absolutely. And
set on imperfect
I'm
love.
such a fan of
Why?
creating
Because we
healthy
expect our
communication,
parents
which
to
is
love us
part of
perfectly.
emotional
We
intelligence.
expect our
Yeah.
kids to
Many
love us
people think that
perfectly.
emotional
In return,
intelligence is just being
sometimes we
able to
expect
say
our partners
one of the
to
five
love us
emotions.
perfectly. I'm
Mhm.
joyful,
And we are not
sad, and this is a good
computers, and even
start. I'm not
computers don't
saying
get it
it's not a
right.
good start.
But humans with all
Knowing
it. So
joy,
I think that when we
sadness,
teach
anger,
children
disgust,
that by
fear,
saying something
knowing
like,
those
"Oh, mommy
emotions,
doesn't
being
have
able
that
to identify
answer. Do you
them,
want to look it
how
up
they
with
are in your
me?"
body, and then
Or,
realizing
"Oh,
there
I
are
see that you
thousands
burnt
of
the
feelings
pancakes
that
you
can
were
come
making
out of.
for
It's a great place
dad.
to
That's
start.
okay.
Why
Let's
is that
figure out
important
what
in
happened here."
communication?
And
Because
so
if I
taking
don't know
that
how
kind
I'm
of,
feeling,
not a top-down
how am I
approach,
going
but
to
let's
express
learn
it? Or
this
if I've been
together
shamed
approach.
to think
Because
that
what
boys should
kiddos
suck
want,
it up
and
and be
you know
tough,
this,
and
that what
girls
kids
should be
want
sweet and
most,
people pleasing.
and
That's why I work
then
from an
I'm going to be
attachment
into that
perspective.
rut
They
of
want
that will be my
attunement.
go-to. And one of the things
The
I often
material
have with
things are
clients on
fine,
starting
that's all
is
good, whatever.
helping them
But if a
tell me
child
how
has
they're
loads of
feeling. And I
material
often
things
say,
and they don't
"I
have a
don't know."
parent looking
And I
them
tell
in the
them, "You
eyes,
do
listening, paying
You
attention.
do know.
We just need to
That's
help
where
you
we
learn
get
to
it wrong
access as parents most
Yeah.
often.
more. And
Been
so
there,
how do
done
we
that.
access it?
We can
Yeah.
start
I think
with
we all
where
have,
in my
because
body am I feeling?
most
Oh, I'm
of
feeling
Western
it in my
society
solar
now lives in
plexus.
a
It doesn't something's
state of
tightening.
severe time
What's
famine.
happening?
Mhm.
Well,
So,
right before
but
I,
taking
you
that
know,
time to solve
Came
the
into the
problems together.
room.
My,
My
my great
husband yelled
grandfather
at
used to
me, or
have
my
a
dad
line
yelled
that
at
he'd
me,
use
or
of
my
just, hey, you
wife
know what?
was sarcastic.
I don't
with me.
know,
Oh,
but give me a
so
week and
you're
we'll both
not
know.
feeling good
And
because somebody was mean to you.
and
you
I
feel
like,
that in your
Jason, that
solar
you brought up
plexus.
the
Well, how does that
time
make you
famine,
feel?
because
Not okay.
I find
Okay,
myself,
not okay.
my husband
And then we
gets into that
eventually
same
get to
thing
where
where
it can be
we're so busy,
hurt,
we're
so
disappointed,
busy, sad,
yet
angry.
what we
Then
want
here's
to
where
realize
we get to
is that
communication.
we all
Then
have
they're able to go
24
back to that
hours in a
person
day.
and
We
say,
all get the same amount of time.
and some
felt
people really do to
hurt.
make ends meet. They
Mhm.
need to
And
work 2
you
jobs, 3
called me
jobs. I get
stupid.
that.
Mm.
I've done
And
that.
those are called
I've been in those
iMessages.
spaces. So what
And
we want
simply
to
being
do
able
is
to
have
look,
compassion
and no
for
one can argue with
ourselves.
how you're feeling. I mean, they can
And
try, but
realize
you
that a
know
lot
that
of
you
our
felt
time
hurt because
in between
Mm.
blaming the other person. And
musts
here's the
of
beauty.
life, what we
That
must
once we
do
learn
is then
iMessages,
discretionary
the other
time.
person then can
And
come
instead of
back,
trying
do
to
the same
multitask
thing.
and think we need to do
When it's
everything,
their turn,
and this is where we
it's
call
better
this is
to
called mirroring
spend
or
5
reflective
minutes of
communication.
focused attention
If
with
the
that
other person
kiddo,
is working on
listening
being
to their
healthy,
day,
then they'll
reading
say,
a book,
if I
even if
hear
it's
you
5
right,
minutes. When I
when
called
you're
you
all
stupid,
in,
you
the
felt
kids
hurt.
notice, just like we notice
And
when
that
a
sounds
partner,
really basic,
when they're
but
distracted,
people miss
if they're
that step
making eye
all the
contact with
time.
us us and really
you're
all
joining with
into a
someone,
story
you're
we're
letting them
telling
know,
or a
"I
problem
heard
we're
you."
sharing. We
And
know
then the
when
third
someone's
piece of
there.
it is, and
So
this
when
is,
we
I just
think
think of it as a
so
time of famine,
incredible
then we
healing
tend
here,
to,
when
the
a person
person
is then
blame
able
and
to
shame, and
say,
even
"I
some lack of accountability
apologize.
can step into the room.
I love you
Yeah.
so
Instead of
much.
pulling
I
it
don't
back in
want
and saying, wait a second.
to
I've
call
talked
you
to so many
stupid
parents who
and
say,
hurt
well, I
your
find myself in the
feelings.
bathroom
In the
hiding
future,
and catching up on my social
I'm going
media
to
for
try
45
very
minutes
hard to refrain
and
from calling you
you don't need
stupid.
to hide.
if I
maybe
make
just
a
take
lapse,
15
please
minutes and
call
really
to my
enjoy it
attention,
with where
and
everybody
I'll do better.
is, make that a thing.
What
You all
that
get 15
does,
minutes
using this
together,
very
and then
simplistic
spend the next half
example,
hour. So it's
it
not
creates-
stolen time.
It takes the rupture,
Yeah.
and not shaming or blaming, but stolen time
it
never quite
repairs it
feels as good.
authentically as
Not
when we
with
claim
and
it.
oh, I'm sorry, whatever.
Absolutely.
But a
Now,
true
that's very similar to some
accountability.
advice I give. I'm
So the
Safest
person
Family on
speaking
the
is
Block is
also
my
hearing
newer program. I'm
themselves
still trying to
say,
figure out how to
"I'm
monetize
sorry,
it.
this
So
is what I
I'm paying the
did
bills with my
inappropriately.
freelance
This
writing
is what
career
I'll
still.
do in the future.
And I speak at a lot
I'm
of conferences
not
about that. And
infallible.
one of the pieces of
And
advice I give
so,
there
if
is
you
if people
catch
aren't
me
meeting their
doing
writing
that,
goals,
please draw
give yourself
my
permission to
attention.
set lower
And
goals
it's
if it's not going to work for
interesting
you right now.
because
If
just going
that's
to
just
relationships in general.
if you can't find an hour to
I've
write,
been
write
married
15
for
minutes.
quite a long
If
time
you
now.
can't write while your parents are
And
visiting
my
for the
partner
holidays,
and I still
take
do
an
this.
intentional vacation
When
instead
we
of
met, he was
consistently
very
failing at the goals you
unfamiliar
set
with
for
it.
yourself.
He had to
Give
learn
yourself
it.
permission
He
to
wanted
just
to
take the
learn it.
10 minutes for
And
you and
we're
the 10 minutes for your kid.
rewiring our brains when we
And
do this,
then the
especially when
next
we're
bit of
older
quality time is cooking dinner together.
It can be learned
You know,
quickly, and sometimes
finding the way
we're
to do
working
it.
against the forces that they hear in other
Absolutely.
environments,
Sometimes
or
when
in
we're
school, or
in it,
even
we
in our
can't
homes,
see it.
if we're
We
not
can't
keeping
see
it.
it. So when
You
we
know,
get into
listening to
these
what other people have to
patterns
say,
of
getting
just
feedback,
tuning
being
in
open
rather than blaming
to
or saying,
doing
I'll
it
call you
differently,
whatever I
because
want
we
to call you.
all
I'll call you
can
stupid
get
if I want
into
to.
those
What that
grooves,
does,
that
on the other
highway
hand,
that
and
just
this
takes
comes
us
from
to
an
what we know
attachment
and what's
perspective, but
familiar,
also
and getting out
neurobiological,
of that.
that if
Sometimes
if
we
I'm
just
saying
need
to
to
someone, you're
nudge
hurting my
ourselves a bit,
feelings,
or
and
allow
they're
ourselves
not
to be
attuning
nudged.
to me,
Absolutely.
Then I
I'm
will
working with the
feel
verbal judo
securely
people
attached
on a
in the
project. And one of their
relationship.
things
If
that
I
they
have
talk
an
about in their
insecure
trainings
attachment
is, like
style,
you
it
talked
will
about, the
make me
modeling,
feel
where our
more
first model is
reactive
as
and
parents,
less
which
safe
may or may not
as
be appropriate.
well. It will
And
worsen that.
for the first 12 years,
And
probably
it
isn't
doesn't
appropriate
create
for
a
how you
healthy
communicate with adults
connection
anyway.
in that relationship.
And then our second model is in school,
And
which
that
is,
is what
I absolutely
communication
respect
is all
teachers, but it is a
about. And the
weird
reason
little
I
model environment.
enunciated
Most of the habits that make you successful for
communication
there are also
is
not
because we
appropriate
are
to how you treat adults and how you treat your own children.
We don't have to always agree.
And then, by the time,
But
we're in our
that's
20s,
why
by the
I
time we're
really
actually
believe
starting
that
to
in
see and
healthy
participate in
relationships,
healthy adult
we don't ever
communication.
have
So we've
to
got
fight.
this 20-year
We can
backlog
disagree,
of bad
but
habits
to get into a
around
battle,
communication and around
that
mutual
makes us
respect to
neurobiologically
overcome.
prepare for
And I'm sure you
war and
encounter this
fight or
all the
flight.
time. I was curious if you
But
had some advice
if
about
we
how to
get out
how
of
to best
that
overcome that, and
game
also
and
how to
instead get
maybe,
into, I'm
especially
gonna
once our kids hit
commune with
those
you,
teenage years,
whether you're
how to
talking
maybe
to a
start
5-year-old, a
training them so
15-year-old,
they
if
only
you
have a
have
10-year
that
backlog to
attitude
overcome.
of communing and connecting.
absolutely. And
Jason,
I'm
I know
such a
it might
fan
sound
of
of listeners, it
creating
might
healthy
sound like a lot of work
communication,
up
which is
front,
part of emotional
but once you
intelligence.
get used to
Many
it,
people think
it
that
becomes
emotional
as
intelligence
familiar
is
as
just being
riding
able
a
to say
bicycle. It
one of the
really
5
does.
emotions.
And for many, I didn't grow
good,
up with this
sad,
kind of
and this is a good
way of
start. I'm
being.
not saying
I
it's
grew up
not a
with
good
children
start.
are seen and
Knowing
not heard,
joy,
and girls are
sadness,
good
anger,
and quiet, and men
disgust,
get to be
fear,
boisterous
knowing
and
those
mean.
emotions, being
So
able
I
to
had a
identify them,
lot,
how they are in your
of
body, and then
reprogramming to
realizing
do.
there are
And
thousands of
it's
feelings
worth
that
it
can come out.
because
It's a great place
what
to start.
happens then inside,
Why is that
you feel
important
really
in
calm
communication?
and at peace most of
Because
the
if I
time.
don't know how
And then
I'm
if you're
feeling,
angry or sad,
how am
you
I
know how
going to
process
express it? Or
And
if
you're
I've
not
been
taking it out on
shamed
people around
to think
you,
that
'cause you're
boys
doing
should
your
suck it
work.
up and be tough,
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
girls should be sweet
And I think also the
people-pleasing,
power of
then I'm gonna be in
apologizing
that
to a child, an
rut
adult,
of
a
that will be
parent.
my go-to. And
You're
one of
not
the
just
things I
modeling good
often
behavior,
work
but
with
this
clients on
is not
starting
something a lot of
is
children
helping them
experience.
tell me how
And
they're
there's
feeling.
immense power
And they
there, an
often
immense show of
say,
mutual
"I don't
respect
know."
there.
And I tell
and
them, "You
mutual
do know.
respect.
You do
Again,
know.
going
We
back,
just need to
Jason,
help
you're
you
so
learn to
on target.
access it."
Going back to
Yeah.
More, and
attachment.
so how do we access
That
it?
is
We can
what
start with
attachment
where
is
in my
all
body
about.
am I
I'm
feeling?
looking at you
Oh,
right
I'm
now,
feeling it in my
right?
solar
I'm tuning
plexus.
into you. I'm
It
not
doesn't
something's
something's
doing
tight here.
anything else.
Well, it's
You're
happening.
doing the same.
Well, right before
Neither
one
one
of
of
us
is
came
being
into the room,
disrespectful.
my husband yelled
Being
at me, or my
the opposite,
dad
being
yelled at
very
me, or my
respectful,
wife
very
was
tuned in.
sarcastic of me.
We're also being respectful to our
So
listeners.
you're not
because we're
feeling
trying
good
to tailor the
because
conversation to
somebody was
something
mean
that
to you and you
be
feel
of
that in your
value
solar
to
plexus. Well, how does that
them.
make
That's
you
why
feel?
we're both here. We
Not
want to be
okay.
of value.
Ah,
And when
okay,
we
not
think
okay.
of that,
And then we
in all of
eventually
our
get to where it can
relationships,
be hurt,
even with a
disappointed,
newborn,
sad, angry.
that newborn,
Then
here's where we get to
attachment theory comes
communication.
from,
Then they're able to go
researchers,
back to that
Donald
person and say,
Winnicott back in the 50s,
I
based on
felt
post-World
hurt
War II
Mm,
and children
children
who had
called me
been
stupid.
pulled from their families of origin.
And
based
those
on
are
the Harlow
called
monkey studies
iMessages.
before that
And
were
simply being
monkeys,
able to
the
let-
rhesus monkeys
And
were
no one
either
can
given
argue
a
with how you're
cloth
feeling. I mean,
maul,
they can try,
a wire
but you
maul,
know
know that you
and
felt
someone
hurt
just put in a cage.
because.
And what really happens when they
Blaming
are
the other
not
person.
given
Here's the
healthy
beauty.
socialization
That
in
once
the
we
form
learn
of a
iMessages,
attuned
the other
parent,
person
or
then
at
can
least
come
a
back,
cloth
do
version,
the same
right?
thing.
The results are
When
not
it's their
good.
turn,
And
there's
this
a
is what
lot
we
of
call, this is called
disorganization
mirroring or
in-
reflective
and
communication.
if
The
the other
infant
person is
monkey, then
working
the
on
young
being
monkey is not
healthy,
socialized
then
properly,
they'll
very
say,
reactive,
if I hear
all
you
sorts of
right,
acting out.
and I
We
called
see
you
this-
If I remember
stupid,
correctly,
Yeah.
because my undergrad is in psychology, so it was a while
It
back.
sounds really
Yes.
But I
basic,
remember that
but
study. If I
people
remember
miss
correctly, the
that
choices
step
between
all the
a wire
time,
monkey
where
with a
you're
bottle,
joining with someone,
Yes.
you're
a
letting
cloth
them
monkey
know,
without
I
food,
heard
and
you.
several of the subjects
And then
died
the
of
third
starvation
piece
because
of
they
it
would
is,
rather
and
have
this
the
is, I
soft
just find
cuddly than the
So
needed food
incredible
that didn't
healing
come with the
here.
soft cuddly.
when a person is then able to
Absolutely. And it
say,
wasn't,
I apologize.
so yes, that is the fuller
I
version of
love
the
you
study, but
so
there was
much.
also
I don't
these
want
separate isolation
call you
caves.
stupid.
So I didn't
Oh,
want to get too much into the science.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the
Yeah.
future,
Cloth. So it
I'm
was
going
just
to try
terry
very
over
hard
wire.
to
It wasn't even
refrain from
made
calling you
too
stupid.
friendly. So that was
If I
one
make a
choice,
lapse,
or
please
one
call
of
it
the
to my
options. The other
attention,
one was just
and I'll
truly
do
this
better.
very austere wire
What
fake
that
mother
does, using this
with
very
the bottle
simplistic
attached.
example,
And then
it
some of them were
creates-
in full
it takes the
isolation.
rupture, the
And what we
brokenness,
found
it
is this
repairs it
need
authentically,
for
not
attunement
with,
and
for
I'm
community,
sorry, whatever,
for
but
a
maternal
true
or
accountability.
paternal
So the person
connection and
speaking is also
affection
hearing
and the
themselves
psychological
say,
downside
I'm
of
sorry,
that
this is what I
is
did
significant, and that's
inappropriately. This
where
is what
we
I'll
hear
do in the
about what is
future.
called the good
I'm
enough
not
mother.
infallible.
Mhm.
And this is
And
for all
so,
parents. It
if
used
you
to be the
catch
good
me
enough mother.
doing
Now
it,
we talk about the good
please
enough
draw it to my
parent.
attention.
And that
And it's
came from
interesting
the research
because just
after
going to
through
relationships in
Winnicott and
general,
Bowlby's research.
I've
The
been married for
concept that you don't
quite a long time now.
Dad, you're not going to
And
be attuned
my
100%
partner and
of
I
the
still
time.
do this.
It's impossible.
When we met,
So
he
the
was
good
very
enough is
unfamiliar
like, if you're
with it. He
attuned,
had to learn
80,
it.
85%
He
of the
wanted to
time,
learn it.
you're in.
And we're
You know,
rewiring
more
our
often
brains
than
when we
not,
do this,
that especially
kid
when
will
we're
grow
older.
up
When
to
we're
be a
kiddos, it
securely
can be learned
attached
quickly, and
adult.
sometimes
They'll
we're
generally
working
partner,
against the
not
forces
always,
that they
with
hear in other
securely attached
environments,
people.
or in
What's the
school, or
benefit
even
of secure
in our own
attachment?
homes if we're not
You feel
consistent.
good in your
So
skin.
when
You
we
feel
get
good in
into
your
these
body, you
patterns,
feel good in your
of
communication
just
ability,
tuning
your
in rather
self-esteem
than
and
blaming or
self-confidence.
saying time
I'll
to be
call you
higher.
whatever I want
For
to
those
call
of you
you.
who
I'll
are
call
one
you
of the
stupid
three
if I
insecure
want to.
attachment styles,
What
you might be
that
going, oh, I'm
does,
doomed.
on the
You're
other
not
hand,
doomed at
and this
all.
comes from an attachment
We
perspective,
can
but also
I've earned
neurobiological.
secure
That
attachment.
if I'm
And
saying
that's
to
again
someone,
the
"You're hurting
premise
my
of
feelings," and they're
my
not
book, The Joy of
attuning to
Imperfect
me,
Love, guides you into how to
then I won't
communicate,
feel
how to
securely
create healthy
attached in the
relationships,
relationship.
how to earn
If I
secure
have an
attachment.
insecure
And it
attachment
fits
style,
very
it
well
will
with
make
your
me
whole
feel more
idea about
reactive
being
and
the
less safe
safest
family
as
on
well.
the block.
It will worsen that
Because when
and
we
it doesn't
are
create
safe,
a
when
healthy
we feel good
connection
in our
that
skin,
relationship.
when we do that, and that is what
serious
communication
emotional
is all about.
and mental
And the
work,
reason
the
I enunciated
psychological
it,
work,
communication,
to be able to
is
show
because
up
we
and be
are
present for
communing.
ourselves and other people.
Mm.
We don't
Then
have
when
to always
emergencies,
agree.
challenges,
But
that's
arise,
why
like
I
the
really
ones you and I
believe
have
that
talked
we,
about
in
um,
healthy relationships,
previously
we
for
don't ever have to
whether it's a
fight.
natural
We can
disaster
disagree,
or a break-in or
Mm.
something
but to get
horrible,
into a battle,
we are more
that
makes us
resilient, and that
neurobiologically
is a
prepared for
hallmark of
war and
secure
fight or flight.
attachment. But there is more
if we
resilience.
get out of
And then
that
we're able
game
to clearly
and instead get
communicate
into, I
with
want
our
to
loved
commune
ones
with you.
about what's going
Whether
on with
we're
us.
talking to
And
a
here in
5-year-old, a
California, and
15-year-old,
if you
know,
have
we've
that
had so many
attitude
natural
of
disasters over the
communing and
last
connecting,
decade that
and
I
Jason, I
remember
know
the
it
first
might
one I was
sound
in
to
shock.
listeners, it might sound like a
I
lot
mean,
of work
pure
up front,
shock. Didn't know
but
what to do.
once
How
you
was I
get
going to meet with
used
my
to
clients? What
it
this,
becomes
what
as
that?
familiar
Didn't know what to
as
take.
riding
We had
a
to
bicycle.
evacuate the
It
home.
really
Fire
does.
was on the
And for my
horizon. I didn't grow up with this
and
kind
what I
of
learned
way
from
of being. I grew
So
up
when
with
we
children
had to
are seen and
evacuate
not heard,
time
and
2, time
girls are
3, and
good
time 4,
and quiet,
it was
and
much
men get to
easier.
be
Not that it
boisterous and
wasn't,
mean.
I don't think it
So
was
I
even
had a
scary those
lot,
times.
a
It was
lot
more,
of reprogramming
okay,
to
this
do.
is the drill.
And it's worth
Why?
it because I have done my
what
work
happens
to
then
learn
inside
from
you
that
feel really
first
calm and at
natural
peace most of the
the
so
time,
that I was more
and then
prepared
if
for
you're
the second
angry
one.
or sad,
And when
you
we
know how
do
to
our
process it,
emotional work,
and you're
our
not taking it out on
psychological
people
work,
around you
then
because
we're
you're
able
doing
to
your work.
pair that with the
Yeah, absolutely.
expertise of someone
And I think
like
also the
you,
power
who
of
brings in those hard
apologizing
skills,
to a
those
child, an
skills that we
adult, a
need to
parent,
know people, have
You're not
the
just
shoes
modeling
in
good
the
behavior,
trunk,
but
all
this
of
is
those
not something a
important
lot of
things
children
that
experience.
are, what has
And
been
then
not
immense
on my
power there, immense
radar
show
until
of
I
mutual
met you.
respect there.
And so when we have
And
this
mutual
powerful
respect.
connection,
Again, going
of the
back, Jason, you're so
psychological
on target.
skills, and
Going
then
back
the
to attachment. That
self-protective
is what
defense
attachment
is
defense
all
type
about.
skills
I'm looking at you right
and
now, right?
proactive
I'm
skills
tuning into
in
you.
the
I'm not
here and
distracted
now.
doing
It's a
anything else.
perfect combination
You're doing
for
the same.
creating a
Neither
safe
one of us
family
is
and a
being
safe
disrespectful.
self. And the
We're
safe
being the
self
opposite. We're
is
being
key
very
to the safe
respectful,
family.
very tuned in.
Absolutely
We're also
agree.
being
And
respectful
also
to
a
our
very
listeners,
important point on that
because
is
we're
if you raise
trying
your
to
children
tailor
to
the
feel
conversation to
attached
something that will
in
be
their
of
relationship with
value
you,
to them.
the
That's
predators
why we're
out there in
both
the
here.
world,
We want to be of
when
value.
they're grooming
And
a
when we
child,
think of
what they're
that
looking
in
for is
all
a
of the
child with a
relationships,
crack in that
even
attachment,
with a newborn,
that they can go in there and
that
create this
newborn,
unhealthy attachment instead.
attachment theory comes from,
And so the way that you protect your kid from that coach
back in the
who's
50s based
looking for
on
someone to be inappropriate with
post-World War
is you make
II
sure that your kid
children who
is
had been
secure
pulled from their
and has
families of
absolute
origin
belief
based on the
in
Harlow monkey studies.
your
Before
love for
that, where
them and their
monkeys,
worthiness
the
to you.
rhesus monkeys, were
And that's
either
exactly
given
what
a
you're talking
cloth
about.
mom,
Absolutely.
a wire
And for
mom,
any parent
and
listening who's
some were just
saying,
put in a cage.
oh,
And what really happens
God,
when they are
this
not
happened to my
given
kid, so I
healthy
must have done a bad job
socialization in
of
the form
parenting.
of
Never
a
blame, never shame
attuned
yourself. There
parent
are
or
There's
at
only
least
one
a
bad guy in that
cloth
scenario.
version,
Only one.
right?
there's
The
only
results are
one,
not
and that
good.
is
There's a
the
lot of
perpetrator. Every
disorganization
single time. I spent 6
the-
years working with
the
juveniles
infant
on
monkey
probation,
and the young monkey is
and
not
even
socialized
some of,
properly, very
there were some
reactive,
parents
all
there
sorts of
who
acting out.
weren't at all in
We see
tune.
this
If I remember
But there were
correctly,
some who were
because my
attuned.
undergrad
Their
is in
things
psychology, so it was a while back.
slip under
Yes.
the
But I remember
radar.
that study. If I remember
And
correctly, the
here's the
choices between
beautiful
a
part.
wire monkey with
If
a
you
bottle
create
Yes.
healthy
and a cloth
communication
monkey
with your
without
child, even
food,
if you
and
haven't
several
in
of
the
the
past,
subjects
you
died
can
of
now.
starvation because they
Then
would
if
rather
someone
have the
approaches
soft
your kid,
cuddly than the
your
needed
kiddo is going to
food
come to you and
that didn't
say,
come with the soft
Mom,
cuddly.
Dad, absolutely.
This
And
is
it
what
wasn't.
And
So
so, yes,
come
that is
to
the
you.
fuller version of
And
the
even
study, but
having
there
a
was also
conversation if you're just new
the
to this and
separate
you're starting to
isolation
build a healthy
cage.
attachment
So I
with
didn't
your
want to
child.
get
It's
too much
never,
into the
ever,
science.
ever too late.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then you come
Cloth,
in and you're able
cloth,
to
so
say,
it was just terry
hey,
over
you know,
wire.
I
It
hear
wasn't
a lot
even
about
made
this in the
too
news now. I
friendly.
want you to
So
know
that was
the
one
door is
choice,
always open.
or one of the
Come to
options.
me
The other one was
anytime
just
anyone
truly
ever
this
approaches
very
you in any
austere
way that makes you
wire
feel
fake
scared or
mother
uncomfortable.
with the bottle
Come to
attached.
me and I will be
And
there
then
for
some of
you.
them were in
And when
full
we make
isolation.
that, and parents,
what we
sometimes that
found
kind
is
of
this
conversation doesn't
need
feel
for
easy,
attunement,
and it's
for
not.
community,
And
for maternal,
sometimes it is
or
easier for
paternal
certain people, but if it's not easy
connection
for
and
you,
affection, and the
remember,
psychological downside
anxiety
of that
is there
significant,
to
and
tell
that's
us
where
that
we
we're
hear about what is
scared
called
or
the good
uncomfortable
enough
about something.
mother.
And if there's not,
And this is
you know,
for all
a true
parents. It
threat
used to be the good
in
enough
talking
mother.
to a
Now we talk
kiddo
about the good enough
sexuality or
parent.
predators,
And
there's
that
no real
came
threat to you. It's
from
just
the
it's
research
uncomfortable, it's
after
unfamiliar.
through
So just
Winnicott and
notice
Bowlby's
that,
research,
move through the
concept that
anxiety,
you don't
create a
Mom,
safe
Dad,
space
you're
to
not
have
going to be
that
attuned
little
100%
chat
of
with
the
the
time.
kid, make
It's
some
impossible.
hot
So
chocolate,
the
or
good
if it's
enough
summer,
is
make
like
some
if you're
lemonade and sit
attuned
down and just
80,
say, hey, I want to talk
85%
to you
of the
about
time,
this.
you're in.
And
Absolutely. And like you
More
said,
often
with
than
the
not,
evacuations,
that
that little
kid will grow
bit of
up to be
rehearsal
a
helps so much.
securely
It is
attached
not
adult.
cheating
They'll
to go
generally
have a talk in the
partner,
bathroom
not
mirror
always,
or
with
have
securely
a friend
attached
and
people.
have a couple
what's
of
the
test
benefit of
runs.
secure
That's not
attachment?
cheating.
You feel good in your skin.
Not
you feel
only
good
is it
in your
not
body,
cheating,
you feel good in your
I find it
communication
absolutely
abilities, your self-esteem
essential.
and
If I'm going to have a big
self-confidence
talk
tend
with
to be
someone, and I'm
higher.
pretty
For those
experienced
of
in
you
this
who are
world,
one of the three
if I'm going to have a
insecure
big talk with
attachment styles, you
someone,
might be going,
I
"Oh, I'm
sometimes
doomed. You're
pencil
not
it
doomed at
out,
all."
just a few
We
notes
can
to myself
all.
to
I've
make
earned
sure I
secure
hit the
attachment.
highlights.
And
I
that's
will
again the
rehearse it,
premise
not
of
necessarily in front of
my
a
book,
mirror,
The
because
Joy
I'd
of
start
Imperfect
cracking up
Love,
at
guides you
myself,
into
and
how to
that
communicate,
might be
how
helpful.
to create
But
healthy
I would
relationships,
also
how to
be
earn
on
secure
my morning
attachment.
walk. I'd be
And it
working
fits
through
very
it
well
more.
with your
How
whole
does this
idea
sound? How
about
does
being
that
the
sound?
safest family
And
on the block.
if you do better
Because
with
when
dialogue
we
with someone,
are
your
safe,
bestie, your
when we
partner,
feel good in
have
our
that dialogue
skin,
with them.
when
Practice
we
on
do
them,
that
because role
serious,
playing. Some people, you know, what's
emotional,
funny is
and
often in my
mental
clinical
work, the
practice, I'll do role playing with
psychological
someone
work
and they'll say, I
to
hate
be
role
able to
playing.
show up and
And
be
then they can't
present
get
for
enough of it
ourselves and other
Yeah.
because
people.
they realize the
Then when
benefit is
emergencies,
just, you're just
challenges
doing a
around
practice
us,
run.
like
That's
the
all it
ones
is.
you and I have talked
And
about.
with me, I'm so safe. You can get
previously
it. You know, you can
for
be totally off
whether
base.
it's a
Doesn't matter.
natural
We are
disaster
learning
or
from
a
it.
break-in or
And that's
something
the
horrible.
idea.
And
We are more
the
realm of
resilient, and that is a hallmark
psychology,
of
as
secure
you know,
attachment,
with
that there is
experience in
more
psychology and having
resilience.
studied it.
And then we're
we can make
able
it
to
scary.
clearly
We
communicate
can
with
make
our
it
loved
fun.
ones
And
about
I have
what's going
learned
on with us,
to
and
make
here in
the world of
California,
psychology
and
fun,
we've had so many
because
natural
human
disasters
beings,
over
I'm
the
not saying
last
our struggles are
decade,
fun.
our
That
struggles can be very
I remember
sad,
the
very
first one, I
difficult,
was in
very
shock.
dark, very hard.
I mean, it was
But
pure
making
shock.
didn't know
it
what to
through
do.
it
How was I
and
going to meet
starting
with
to
my
see the
clients?
light
What this, what that?
can
Didn't know
be
what to
if we
take. We had
make
to
it so,
evacuate the
especially
home.
as we
Fire
get
was on
more
the
toward the
horizon,
light.
kind of
It
thing.
can become
And what I
enjoyable
learned
because
from
it's
that,
like, you know,
so when we had
being
to
in a rowboat
evacuate
and you're
time
rowing,
2,
rowing,
time
rowing
3, and
really
time
hard,
4,
and then you get to the other
it was
side
much
and you go,
easier.
I did
Not
this.
that it wasn't.
This
I don't
was
think it was
pretty
even
awesome.
scary those times.
And here
It
I'm
was
talking
more,
to a
okay,
black
this
belt.
is
You
the
know how
drill.
great it is to
Why?
work up
Because
those
I've
different
done the
levels and get to a
work
level where you
learn
go,
from the
yeah.
first
I think you're a black belt.
natural
Yes, ma'am.
disasters,
Yes,
so that
I
was
thought
more
so.
prepared
And
for
so
the
you
second
know,
one.
and that's how I
And when
see
we do our
psychology,
emotional
but we never
work, our
get necessarily
psychological
to a
work,
black belt,
then we're able
because
to
if you're like
pair
me,
that with the
I'm always growing.
expertise
I'll
of
probably
someone
never
like
achieve a
you,
black belt in
who brings in
psychology
those
because
hard
there's so much
skills,
beyond that for me to
those
learn.
skills that we need
Well,
to
that's one of the things about
You know, I
black belt.
have the
You know,
shoes
a
in
lot
the
of people
trunk,
say
all
black
of
belt is
those
when you start
important
learning.
things
You know,
that are,
there's
that has
absolutely
been
a
not
culture
on
of
my radar until I
continuing,
met
ever
you.
continuing
And
growth
so
in
when we
education. It's
have
definitely
this
part of it.
powerful
I
But
connection,
Thank
Yeah.
you.
the psychological skills,
So I have
and then the
an interesting question on this because you said several times
self-protective
about how, it's never
defense
too late to
type
start.
skills,
You got to give
and
yourself a break if
proactive
you've been
skills in the
perpetuating
here and
patterns
now.
that you thought
It's
were
a
the right
perfect
ones, but you're getting new
combination for
information now.
creating a safe
And I'll share a story from my
and a
family. Our
safe
sons, I think I
self.
mentioned the other
And the
day, they're
safe
10 years
self
apart.
is key to the
And
safe
I
life.
started really looking
Absolutely
in,
agree.
having
And also a
dialogues
very
with
important point on that is if you
psychologists
raise your children
and
to feel
parenting experts
attached in
when the oldest
their
one was 20
relationship
and the
with
youngest
you,
one was 10.
the predators out there in
And
the world,
so I know a
when
lot better
they're
now.
grooming a child,
And
what they're
so,
looking
and there
for
are
is a
differences
child
between the
with
ways
a
that we
crack
raise
in
them.
that
And fortunately, I
attachment
have a very
that
good
they can go
relationship
with
with my
their
oldest,
create
to
this
the point that
unhealthy attachment
he and I
instead.
refer to him as the rough draft.
And so the way that you protect your kid from
But
that coach,
it can be
who's
very hard
looking for someone to be
to
inappropriate
look
with,
at how
is
how
you
you've
make
been
sure that
doing
your
as a
kid
parent,
is
and then
secure
make that
and has
change.
absolute belief in
And not only does
your
that
love for them
sense that you
and
need
their
to be
worthiness to
infallibles
you.
in there.
And that's
There's
exactly what
the
you're talking about.
inertia of habit,
Absolutely.
and
for
also
any
there's
parent
the
listening who's
guilt
saying,
you carry for
"Oh,
having
God,
made
this happened to
mistakes
my
in
kid,
the
so I
most
must have done a
important thing
bad
you will
job
ever
of
do."
parenting." Never blame, never
And
shame
I
yourself.
think a lot of
There
parents
are
face
There's
a
only
lot
one
of
bad guy in
parents
that
have
scenario. Only one.
challenges.
There's only one.
Coming to terms
and
with that and
is
moving
the
forward from it. What would
perpetrator
you
every
recommend?
single time. I spent 6 years working with
such, oh my
juveniles on
goodness, Jason,
probation.
such a good
And
point.
even some of,
And
there were some parents
what
there
I
who
tend
weren't
to
at all
say
attuned.
is
But there were some who
it's
were
the
attuned,
people.
where
I'm
things
not a fan of
slip
blame,
under the
and I'm
radar.
not a fan
And
of shame.
here's the
and
beautiful
I'm not
part.
a fan of
If
guilt.
you create
I
healthy
think
communication
that
with
when
your child,
we
even
learn
if you
to be
haven't in the past, you
accountable,
can now.
that blame,
Then if
shame,
someone
and
approaches
guilt
your
and
kid,
shame is at the root
your
of
kiddo
so
is going to
much
come to you and
dysfunction,
say,
mental health
"Mom,
disorders, substance
Dad,
abuse. So here's my
this
thought
is
on
what
this.
happened."
Parent, if you're feeling
And they'll
guilt, here's my
come to
favorite thing to
you.
tell people
And
about
even
guilt.
having a
Guilt
conversation,
serves a
if you're
purpose.
just new to
It's
this and
there
you're
to tell
starting
you
to
you've done
build a
something
healthy
wrong
attachment with your
and to
child,
ask
it's
you to
never,
correct
ever,
it.
ever too late.
After
Then you
you've
come
done
in
that,
and you're able to say,
let
"Hey,
yourself move
you
on.
know, I
And this
hear
is
a
the
lot
example
about
I
this in
use. I
the
tell
news
people,
now, and I
if you
want you
stole
to
a
know
Hershey
that the
bar
word is
from the
always
corner
open.
store and
Come
guilt
to me
comes up,
anytime,
thank the
anyone
guilt.
who
It's there
approaches
for a
you
good
in
reason.
any way
It's
that
telling
makes you feel
you
scared
stealing
or
isn't a good
uncomfortable.
thing. You know, you
Come
don't
to
want
me
someone
and
to
I will
steal
be
from
there
you.
for you.
Take back the
And
Hershey
when
bar,
we
make
make
an
that,
act of
and
amends,
parents,
give the
sometimes
Salvation
that
Army
kind
a
of
dollar, do
conversation
something
doesn't
good,
feel
pick trash
easy.
up from the street,
And
whatever it
it's
is,
not.
and then learn.
And
I
oh,
don't
I mean,
want to
sometimes it is
steal.
easier
It
for
doesn't
certain other people.
good
But if
but
it's not
isn't
easy
good
for you,
for the world,
remember,
then move on with your life.
anxiety
For many
is
of us,
there to
me
tell us
included,
that we're
we
scared or uncomfortable
parented
about something.
the way
And if there's
we
not,
learned
you know,
to
a true
the way
threat
we were
in talking to a
parented.
kiddo about
We may
sexuality or
notice
predators,
things
there's no real
that
threat to
our
you. It's just,
parents did that
just
were
it's uncomfortable, it's
unhealthy or
unfamiliar.
unhelpful,
So just
and
notice
try
that,
very
move through the
hard to do it
anxiety,
differently,
create a safe space
and
to
still
have that
make
little chat with a
mistakes.
kid, make
Welcome to
some
the
hot
world of
chocolate, or if it's summer, make
imperfection.
some lemonade and
But
sit down and
notice
just
the
say, hey, I want
piece
to talk
I
to you about
said,
this.
that if you at all
Absolutely. And like
tried
you
to
said, with
heal,
with the
Carry on the
evacuations,
things
that
your
little
parents
little
did,
bit of rehearsal
if
helps so much.
anything,
it is not cheating
And
to
to
go have a talk in the
not
bathroom
do the
mirror
things your
or have
parents did,
a friend and have a couple of
then
test runs.
you were
That's
on
not
the
cheating.
right track. You were, and you
Oh,
still may
not only is
have
it
done as
not
well as you would
cheating,
have wanted.
I find it
So forgive
absolutely
yourself,
essential.
let go
If I'm
of
going to have a
guilt.
big talk with someone,
If you
I'm
feel
pretty
the need to
experienced in this realm.
apologize to your
If I'm going to
child
have a
or
big
your
talk with
child,
someone,
whatever age
I
they
sometimes
are,
pencil it out.
apologize.
Just just a
ask
few
if there's
notes to
something that
myself
they need,
to make
some way
sure
you
I
could
hit the
fix it.
highlights.
I
But
will
most
rehearse
important
it,
not
is to
necessarily in front of a
realize that
mirror
you
because I'd
then
start
have the
cracking up at
power to
myself,
carry a
and that
new,
that might be
fresh,
helpful.
more
But I
attuned
would
energy
also
into
be
your
on my
future
morning walk. I'd be
interactions.
working through it.
And
And if
how does this
parenting
sound? How does
were
that sound?
easy and
And
perfectable,
if you do better with a dialogue
think
with
how
someone,
long
your
people have been
bestie, your
parents on the
partner,
planet. Have that
it
dialogue
would
with
be
them,
perfect by
practice
now.
on them, because
And the
role
very
playing,
nature
some
of
people,
parenting,
you know what's
even
funny
if you
is
get the
often in my
perfect
clinical
parenting
practice, I'll do
strategy
role playing with
down,
someone,
and
and they'll say, I
what
hate
works for
role
child
playing.
one won't
And then they
necessarily
can't
work
get
for
enough
child
of it,
2
or 3 or
because they
4.
realize
Because
the
we're all
benefit.
you
It's
need.
just,
You're
so
just
I'm not saying
doing a
it's a
practice
pass
run.
to
That's all
be
it
a
is.
terrible
And
parent,
with
to
me,
be an
I'm so
abusive
safe. You can
parent,
get
or
it.
any.
No,
You
you can be
You
totally off
don't
base.
want
Doesn't
to
matter.
be
We're
harming
learning
people
from it,
intentionally.
and that's the
But we do
idea.
want to
And
know,
the
to
realm
forgive
of
ourselves for things that we did that were
psychology, as you
negligent or
know,
thoughtless
with
or not
experience
knowing,
in psychology and
and
having studied it,
fix
we
it
can
moving
make it
forward.
scary,
Yeah.
or we can make it
And I
fun.
appreciate you
And I
mentioning
have
the act of
learned
amends, act of
to make
atonement,
the
which
world of psychology
apologizing is good, but
fun,
sometimes you
because
make the apology and
human
you still
beings,
feel
I'm
bad
not
about
saying
it.
our struggles are
And
fun.
that
Our struggles can be
humans
very sad, very difficult, very
really do
dark,
well
very
with ritual.
hard.
It's
But
something that's just
making
wired into
it
us.
through it
So
and
if you have
starting
a
to see the
ritual, you
light
make that ritual act of
can be,
atonement,
if we make it so,
whatever it
especially as we
is,
get more toward the light,
it can be so
become
powerful. It can help you
enjoyable,
get over
because
that
it's
guilt. At
like,
least that's been my
you know,
experience.
being in a rowboat, and you're rowing
I
and
am
rowing and rowing
such a
really hard, and
believer
then
in
you get
that
to the other side and you go,
because I
this
did
isn't about
this.
buying
This was pretty
flowers
for
and here I'm
someone, or
talking
giving your
to
child
a black
toy
belt. You know
and
how
saying
great
it's
it
all
is to
good.
work up
No, that's
those different
bribery.
levels.
That's
And
not an
To the
apology.
level where
that's
you can go,
bribery,
yeah.
and
It's
I think you're a
avoiding the
black
true
belt.
responsibility.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
And
I
going
thought
back
so.
again to
And so
when I
you
worked on
know, and that's
probation,
how
where
I
there
see
was some
psychology,
really
big,
but we never get necessarily
some
to a black
big
belt, because
damage
if you're
done
like
to other
me,
people.
I'm always
And what I
growing. I'll probably
worked
never
with,
achieve a black belt in
people
psychology
on
because there's so
doing
much
was
beyond that
learning
for me to
how
learn.
to make these
Well, that's one of the things about black belt.
substitute
A lot of people
And
say
for
black
an
belt is where you start learning.
apology to be
You know,
profoundly
there's absolutely
changing
a
to the
culture
self
of
and the other person,
ever
it
continuing
does
growth
need
in
to
education.
have those
It's
core
definitely part of it.
pieces
I
of
didn't
going in, doing
Thank
the
you.
work,
So
acknowledging
I have
it,
an
then seeing if
interesting
that other
question on this, because
person
you've
is
said several
ready
times about how,
for
it's,
the
it's never too late to
serious
start.
apology,
You got to give
that
yourself a break if you've
promise to
been
shift. And
perpetuating
I
patterns that
mean
you
a
thought were the right
heartfelt,
ones,
true
but you're getting new
promise,
information now.
knowing there are certain
And I'll
things that
share a
you
story from my family. Our
cannot
sons,
do
I think I
again.
mentioned the other day, they're
You
10 years apart.
cannot sexually
And
abuse
I
someone.
started
You
really
cannot,
looking in,
no.
having dialogues
But there are
with
certain things, like if
psychologists
you've called
and
names
parenting
all
experts
of your life,
when
and
the
you're
oldest one
trying
was
to
20 and
change
the
that
youngest
at
one was
age
10.
35, 45, 55,
And so
you may
I
need
know
a
a
couple
lot
of
better now.
passes to do that.
And
And
there are
then
differences
doing
between the
the
ways that we
amends.
raised him. And
And
fortunately, I
I
have a
find that
very good
when you
relationship with
do
my
that
oldest, to the
amends,
point that he
especially
and I
if it's
refer to him
something
as the
that's
rough draft.
meaningful to the other person, whether it's a
But
letter,
it can
whether
be
it's
very
a clock
hard
they can look at,
to
a
look at
little
how
statue
you've
that is
been doing as a
meaningful, a
parent
meaningful
and
reminder,
then make
whatever
that
it is,
change.
then becomes
And not only does,
symbolic,
that
not
sense that you need to
necessarily
be
of the
infallibles in
rupture,
there, there's
but of
the
hope for the
inertia of
future,
habit,
that
and also
promise
there's
to
the
show
guilt
up
you carry for having
differently.
made
And I
mistakes
have
in the
seen when
most
people
important thing
embrace
you will
these
ever do.
ideas, I have seen
And I think a
relationships
lot of parents
shift
face that, and I think a
from
lot of parents
near
have
divorce or
challenges
near or full
coming to terms with
estrangement
that and moving
back
forward
to
from it.
connection.
What would you
What's the
recommend?
difference between the people and the
It's
families that
such,
make
oh my
it and
goodness,
those
Jason,
that
it's
don't?
such a good point.
It's the
And
willingness on both
what
sides.
I tend to
Mhm.
Both
say
sides
is
must be
it's the
willing
people.
to show
I'm
up.
not a
And it
fan
doesn't
of
mean the
blame,
person who's
and I'm
injured
not a fan
is
of shame,
always ready.
and I'm not a fan
They are
of
they
guilt.
if they've been
I
abused in
think
some
that
way or
when
they
we
don't
learn to
trust,
be
it may take time.
accountable,
But when both
that
people are
blame,
able to show show up
and guilt
and
shame is at
connect,
the root of
that's
so much
where
dysfunction, mental
the
health disorders, substance
repairs
abuse.
are
So
able
here's
to
my
come.
create
This
parent,
beautiful
if you're
bond
feeling
that
guilt,
makes those
here's my favorite
partners
thing to tell people
stronger,
about
or the
guilt.
parent-child
Guilt serves a
relationship
purpose.
stronger
It's
than
there to
ever.
tell you you've done something wrong and to ask you to
Absolutely.
correct
And I
it.
think that
after
like
you've
that you
done
said
that,
stronger than ever at the end, because
let yourself
healing
move
that
on.
wound
And this is the
together.
example I use.
You
I tell
mentioned
people,
very early
she
on the
stole a Hershey
dynamic of
bar
having it
from the
be
corner
out of
store,
the
and
you
guilt
versus
comes
them
up.
and
Thank the
into
guilt.
the
It's
two
there
of you
for a good
against the
reason.
problem.
It's telling you stealing isn't a good
Absolutely.
thing.
And
You wouldn't
again,
want someone to
Jason,
steal
I
from
think
you.
neurolinguistics
Take back the Hershey bar.
makes
Make an
such
act of
a
amends.
difference,
Give the
because
Salvation
when we
Army $1.
don't
Do
get
something
into
good. Pick
I'm right,
trash
you're
up from the
wrong,
street,
I'm
whatever it is.
good, you're bad,
And then learn.
and we
I
look
don't
at
want
this
to
as
steal.
a team.
It doesn't
A
feel good.
team
It
of
isn't good.
partner
for
to
the world.
partner,
Then
parent to
move on with your
child,
life.
for
Parent to
many of
teacher,
us,
whatever it
me
is,
included.
when we become
We
a team, we are
parented
focusing
the
on
way we
addressing
learned,
whatever
the way
issue,
we were parented.
whatever problem
We
is in
may
front of us.
notice things
Not to get
that
my
our parents
way,
did
because
that
my
were
way might not be
unhealthy
the
or
best way, but if I
unhelpful,
lean into
and
you
tried very
and you
hard
say,
to do
hey,
it differently,
this is why I'm
still
suggesting
make
this, or you lean into me
mistakes.
and say, why are you
Welcome to
suggesting
the
that?
world
And
of
I remember
imperfection.
hearing about research
But
that, you know,
notice the
parents often
piece
think they
I
need to come
said,
down and give the
that
kiddo a
if
big
you at all
punishment.
tried to
And
heal,
there's
to carry
research
on
that
the things
shows
your
in
parents
many
did
cases,
well,
if a
if
parent gets
anything,
out of this I know
and
best thing
to
and says to
not
the
do the
child,
things
well,
your
okay, you
parents
hit your
did,
brother, you stole his toy,
then you
I'm
were
gonna put you
on
in
the
your
right
room
track.
for
You were, and you
50
still
minutes or
may
whatever it
not
might
have
be.
done as
But
well
if you
as you
don't
would
do
have
that and you say to the
wanted.
child,
So
you
forgive
hit your
yourself,
brother and you stole
let
his
go
toy.
of guilt. If you
What
feel
do
the
you
need
think
to
should happen in
apologize
this
to your
case?
child or your
And
child,
in
whatever
many
age
cases,
they
that
are,
child will reflect and
apologize,
come back
ask
with
if
a
there's something that they need, some way you
self-punishment,
could
so to
fix it.
speak.
Yeah.
But
But
most
most
important
more
is to
in
realize
more
that
of
you
an
then have the
impact, more
power to
appropriate
carry
and
new,
harder,
refreshed, more
on the
attuned
child than what the
energy
parent would have come
into
up
your
with.
future
Yeah,
interactions.
absolutely. In
And
our family,
if
often
parenting
we have a thing like
were
that. Now the kids are
easy and
10 years apart, so they don't fight
perfectable,
much. It's much more of an uncle
think a lot
nephew
how
kind of
long
vibe.
people have been
But
parents on
after
the planet.
something,
It would be
neutral corners,
perfect
then
by
come back.
now.
Whoa,
And the
man,
very
that sucked.
nature of parenting,
I'm
even
gonna
if
do
you
next.
get the perfect
And
parenting
instead of
strategy
that,
down,
as you say, that
and
parent
what works
up
for child
over
one
and
won't
above,
necessarily
just
work
kind
for
of
child
get
two or
not
three
go
or
to their
four,
level of
because we're
training and
all
cognitive
unique.
ability,
So I'm
because
not saying it's a
that's
pass
not
to be
necessarily
a
appropriately
terrible
useful, but
parent,
just
to
in
be
terms
an
of we're not
abusive
coming down
parent,
on them
or
as an
any.
authority.
No,
We're
no, no,
joining
no.
them
We
and saying,
don't
okay,
want to
this
be
sucked. What are we going to do to
harming
make sure
people
this sucks less next time?
intentionally, but we
Or
do
however
want
your
to
family
know,
likes to,
to
you know,
forgive ourselves for things
the
that
language
we
that
did
your
that were
family likes.
negligent or thoughtless or not knowing.
Absolutely, because
And
kids want
fix it moving
consistency.
forward.
Yeah.
They want boundaries, even if we don't
And
think
I
they want
appreciate you
boundaries.
mentioning
They
the
want
act of amends,
consistency,
act
they
of
want
atonement,
stability,
which
they want boundaries.
apologizing
They
is
don't
good,
need
but
a
sometimes you
parent
make the
to
apology and
be,
you still feel bad
a
about it.
giant over them.
And
They
that
don't need a parent who's the best friend, especially when
really,
they're,
really
under
do
18.
well
They
with
need a parent
ritual.
who's a parent.
It's something that's
And
just
so when
wired
we
into
work
us.
with
So if you have a
children
ritual,
and help
you
them
make
see
that ritual
at
act
an
of
age
atonement,
appropriate way, help them
whatever it
develop
is,
autonomy, help them see
it
the
can be so
importance of
powerful.
being
It can help you get
consistent,
over
being
that guilt. At least
respectful,
that's
all
been
of
my
these things that we
experience.
want as adults, we
Oh,
can
I am
learn to
such a
instill in
believer
our
in that
children as well.
because
This isn't
And with that,
about
as you say, they
buying
need that autonomy,
flowers
and they
for
need somebody
someone
who
or giving
will
your
show
child a
them those
toy
boundaries.
and saying it's all
I remember
good.
very
No, that's
clearly,
bribery.
this was well more than
That's
20 years
that's
ago, in class,
bribery,
the
and
first
it's
child development
avoiding the true
professor I
responsibility.
had was,
And getting
kids are
back
constantly
again
asking
to
two
when I worked
questions.
on
And the first one is, am I
prevention, where there
safe? And
was
the second
some
one is, who's in charge
really
around here?
big,
And if the answer to the second one is me,
damage done to
that's
other people.
terrifying,
And what I worked with
because they
many
know they're
people
not
on
qualified.
doing was learning how
and you
to
put
make
it
these
really well.
substantive
Am I safe and
apologies.
who's in charge?
And for an
And
apology
I will
to
never
be
forget in my
profoundly
office I
changing
had
to
this
the self
couple
and the other person,
and they were
it does
newish
need to
parents.
have
They had a
those core
3-year-old
pieces
and
of going in, doing
they
your
were in a
work,
dysfunctional
acknowledging
space, so
it,
the kiddo was
then
running
seeing
the
if that other
relationship,
person
and
is
they'd bring the
ready
kiddo
for
into the
for
sessions, and the
for
kid
the
was running
serious
them.
apology.
The kid was over
That
top them, running,
promise
screaming to
to
leave the
shift,
room,
and I mean a
and they
heartfelt, true
couldn't seem
promise,
to
knowing
understand.
there are certain things that you
The kid
cannot
wanted
do
them
again.
in charge.
You cannot
And when the kid
sexually
doesn't
abuse someone. You
feel that the
cannot,
parents are in charge,
no.
the
But there are
child
certain things like if
may
you've
be
called
getting their
names
needs met
all
for
of
ice
your
cream,
life,
for
and
this,
you're
for
trying
that,
to change
change
that
physical
at
thing
age
they want,
35,
but
45,
they
55,
don't
feel
You may
safe.
need a couple
couple of
because
passes
a
to do
child
that.
who's 3,
And then
5,
doing the amendment.
10, And even I find
16,
that when you
17,
do that
they know
amends,
they generally
especially if
don't
it's something that's
have.
meaningful to
there
the
are
other person, whether
anomalies,
it's a
but they generally
letter,
know they
whether
don't
it's a
have
walk they can
what
look
they
at,
need to
a little
really
statue
be
that is
safe.
meaningful and meaningful.
Brains
to
are
the
not
reader.
fully myelinated
Whatever it
until
is,
the
then
kiddo's
becomes
25.
symbolic.
So
Yeah.
we know,
Not
hey, there are
necessarily of a
misfirings happening
rupture,
all
but
the
of hope
time.
for the
Absolutely.
future.
A really
That
sweet and
promise to
comical
show
example
up
of that is
differently.
my family
And
were
I
lucky enough.
have
We spent
seen when
last
people
retreat,
embrace these
and
ideas. I have seen
nephew who was
relationships
22 and his two
from
friends who
near
were 21
divorce
and 20 came to
or
visit us, but
near
they
or
stopped in
full
Amsterdam for a week
estrangement
first.
back to
And these are,
connection.
these are
What's
young.
the difference between the people and the families that
Was
make
their
it
first
and
time out
those
of the
that
country. For
don't?
one of them, it was his first time on
It's
a
the
plane.
willingness on both sides.
By the time they got to
Both
us, like
sides
5-6 days
must
into their
be
thing, they
willing
all three of
to
them so
show up.
clearly
And it
needed an
doesn't mean the
adult.
person who's
They're like,
injured
we're
is
really tired of
always
making
ready.
decisions and being
They
responsible for
are,
our own
if
safety.
they've been abused in some way or
And it was,
they don't
the
trust,
fatigue was so
it may
clear, and
take
the
time,
kids in
but
their
when
early
both people
20s.
are able to show up and connect,
And I think
that's where
I think it's so
the
important for us to remember
repairs are
that
able to
because
create
in
this
your
beautiful
one of the
bond
reasons you
that
do what
makes
you
those
do,
partners
you help
stronger,
people.
or
We
the
go back
parent-child
to that
relationship
foundation of
stronger
safety,
than
Maslow's
ever.
hierarchy of needs. If you don't
Absolutely.
have
And I
that
think
safety,
that I
that
like that you said
physical
stronger than
safety
ever at the end,
within
because
all of us
healing
is
that wound
about,
together.
I
You mentioned
say this
very
again,
early
it's
on
in
the
my books,
dynamic of having
home
it
is where
be
we start
out of
from.
the you versus
And if the
them
home
and
environment
into
is
the
safe,
two of you
whether
against
that
the problem.
home is a tent with a family because we're on a
Absolutely.
camping
And again,
adventure,
Jason,
a
I think
hotel room because we're
neurolinguistics
traveling, a
makes
car,
such a
or the
difference, because
physical
when
residence where
we
everybody
don't get into
lives.
I'm right, you're
When we
wrong,
feel
I'm
safe at
good, you're
home,
bad,
we
and
can
we look
pretty
at
much
this
face
as
the
team,
outside
a
world.
team of
Anything that comes
partner
at
to
us.
partner,
When we feel
parent to
connected to our
child,
partner,
parent
to
to
your
teacher,
whomever's
whatever
there,
it is.
and the kids will
When we
pick up on
become
that. When
a
we create
team,
that safe
we are
place at home,
focusing
it doesn't
on
mean it will be
addressing
perfect.
whatever issue,
Things happen,
whatever
people have
problem is in
disagreements,
front of
but it
us,
means that people
not to get
know
my
that they will
way,
not
because my
be
way might
so,
not be the best way,
kicked
but if I
out,
lean into
unloved,
you and you
found
say,
unworthy,
hey,
all of those
this
things,
is why I'm
rejected.
suggesting
They
this, or you
know
lean into me and say,
home
why
is
are
a
you
safe
suggesting
place.
that?
And to
And I
me,
remember
that is the
hearing about
underpinning
research
of
that,
what
parents
makes
often think they need
people
to come down
have
and give the
that
kiddo a big
safest family
punishment.
on the block.
And there's research
I
that shows
absolutely agree.
in
No,
many
I kind
cases,
of want
if
to
a
start
parent
just a
gets
little, because we
out
spent
of
the
this
last 10
I
minutes
know
or
best
so
thing
having a
and says to the
conversation that could
child,
sound
hey,
like
okay, you
we're
hit your
supporting
brother,
the
you stole
top
his
down, my
toy.
way or the highway
I'm going to put
authoritarian
you in your
parenting
room
that
for,
we both
50
disagree with.
minutes or whatever
So,
it
what
might
are
be.
some hints
But if
about
you don't do that
establishing
and you
those
say to a
boundaries that
child,
create that?
you hit your
Yeah, I'm
brother
in
and you
charge and I'm
stole
taking
his
care of you
toy.
until you're ready to be in
What do
charge.
you think should
Without,
happen in this case?
what would we say,
And in many
as it
cases,
were?
that child will reflect and
I
come
think it's
back with
really
a
important, Jason, when we look
self-punishment,
at
so
this,
to
to
speak,
realize
Yeah.
is
that more
children are
more of an
evolving and going
impact, more
through
appropriate
developmental
and
stages.
harder
And with
Yeah.
on
every
the child than what the parent would have
developmental
come up with.
stage,
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
need to
In our
adjust
family,
for
often
that stage
we have a
because
thing
the
like that. Now the
child
kids
is
are 10
able to
10 years
take
apart, so they don't
on
fight
more.
much. It's much more of an
Where
uncle
we as
nephew kind of
parents
vibe.
tend to muck
But
it
after
up a
something,
bit is if we go
neutral
over here to
corners, they'll come
complete
back.
free range
Whoa, man, that
parenting,
sucked.
like no
What are we gonna
controls,
do next?
which is
You know,
more
and instead
appropriate
of
to be
that,
sort of
as you
an
say,
in
that
and
parent
out thing as a
up
child.
over and
You give
above,
them,
but just kind of
but
get,
no, it's free
not go to their
range and
level of
just letting go
training
of
and cognitive
letting go of
ability,
a child.
because
That's
that's
not
not
healthy. But being
necessarily
over
appropriate or
here and
useful. But
saying
just in
my
terms of,
way
we're
or
not
the
coming down on them as an
highway,
authority. We're
that
joining
very
them and saying,
top-down
"Okay, this
approach,
sucked. What are we going to do to make
we
sure this
actually
sucks less
don't
next
ever
time?"
want to be doing that.
Or
We do a
however
bit
your family
more
likes
of
to,
that when a
you know,
child is just
the
born,
language that your family
but we're
likes.
still not really doing
Absolutely,
it because if we're doing
kids
healthy
want
parenting, we're paying
consistency.
attention.
Yeah.
They want
Is the
boundaries,
child,
even
sure,
if
it
we
might
don't
work
think
better
they
for
want
me to feed
boundaries.
the
They
child,
want
three
consistency,
times a
they want
day or
stability, they
twice a
want
day,
boundaries.
but
They don't
the
need a
child is
parent to
showing
be,
when it's
a
crying
giant over them,
and
and
they
they
don't
don't
need a parent as a best
hungry
friend,
and
especially when
tired,
they're,
and
under
my
18, they need
diaper
a
needs
parent who's a
change
parent.
something.
And
The
so when
idea
we
is
work
to use
with
that
children
template as
and help
a
them see
child
that at an age
is
appropriate way,
growing,
help them
to see,
develop
okay, the
autonomy,
child's
help them
wiggling
see the
or importance
crying,
of being
what do you
consistent,
need?
being respectful.
And
all
so
of
if
these
the
things that
child
we
is
want as
3
adults,
and is
we
asking
can
for a
learn to
lollipop, but they
instill
haven't,
in our
you know,
children as well.
eaten
any protein
And with
during
that, as
the
you say,
day,
they need
is
that
that
autonomy, and they need somebody who will show them those boundaries.
They have
I remember very clearly, this was well more than 20 years ago in class, the first child development
some of it's
professor I
just
had was,
wisdom.
kids are
But we
constantly asking
want
two
to
questions. The first one is, am I safe? And the second one is, who's in charge around here?
That's why I keep going back.
And if the answer to the second one is me,
if we don't work on our
that's
issues,
terrifying.
then we may give in to the child because we
they
want
know
the
they're not
child
qualified.
to love us.
And
may
you
want
put
to
it
not
really
deal with
well.
the child
Am I
crying.
safe
We
and
may be
who's in
mad at our
charge?
partner
Yeah.
and
And
want to
I
then
will
befriend
never
the
forget,
7-year-old
in my
and
office,
make
I
the
had this
7-year-old
couple,
our friend.
and
We're not
they
doing
were
our work.
newish
So
parents.
what
They had a
we
3-year-old.
do, if
And
we're paying attention to our
they
own
were
inner
in a
world and our
dysfunctional
own
space.
boundaries,
So the kiddo
then we
was running the
realize
relationship, and
that
I'd
we
bring the
are
kiddo into the
modeling
sessions,
that
and the kid
for
was
the
running them.
kid. The
And
kid
when
was
the kid
over top
wants
them, running,
something, we
screaming to leave the
reflect.
room.
And we say,
And
I
they
hear
couldn't seem
that
to
you
understand. Stay
understand.
up till 10 and have
The
your phone in
kid
your bedroom
wanted
with you.
them in
But
charge.
no, the phone gets checked.
And when the kid
by
doesn't
the kitchen
feel
door,
that the parents
and
are in
that's where it
charge,
stays.
the child
And
may be getting their
that's the
needs
rule.
met
Well,
for
why,
ice cream,
Mom?
for
Why
this,
do I
for
need
that, for
that?
every physical
You
thing they
need
want,
that because
but
you
they
need good
don't
sleep.
feel safe. And so
If
when
the
we have
child
these
has 3,
firm,
5,
consistent
10,
guidelines on
even
some of the basics,
16, 17,
then we're
they know
able
they
to give the
generally
child
don't
more autonomy
have-
on other things.
There
One
are
of the things
that
that's
so
anomalies,
powerful is
but
the
they
power
generally
of
know they
choice.
don't have
As you're
what
helping
they
a kid
need
build
to
autonomy
really
at
be
any
safe.
age,
Brains
instead
are
of
not
saying,
fully
"Eat your
myelinated
carrots,
until the
eat your
kiddo's
peas," if you
25.
say,
So
hey,
we know, hey,
you
there
can
are
have
misfirings
for
happening
your
all
vegetables,
the
carrots,
time.
peas, or broccoli.
Absolutely. A
Which would you
really
prefer?
sweet and comical
What
example
are
of
you?
that
What
is
are you doing?
my
You're
family were
building
lucky
that
enough, we spent
sense
last retreat,
of self-mastery, of
uh,
autonomy.
nephew
Then
who
when
was
it comes
22
time
and
for
his
their
two friends who
studying, and
were
you say, hey, it's
21
time
and
to go
20
to
came to
study.
visit us,
Would
but they
you
stopped in
rather
Amsterdam
eat
for
a
a week
snack
first.
or study
And
now?
these are
So
young,
the child is used to not only listening,
it was their first time out
get
of the
this,
country.
but
For one
they're
of them, it was his
listening
first
to
time
their
on a plane.
needs. They know you'll honor
By the
their
time they
needs
got
when
to us, like
possible.
5-6 days into their
And then
thing,
they have that
all three of them so
chance of
clearly
saying, well,
needed an
if I
adult.
choose to
They're like,
study now,
we're really
rather
tired
than,
of making decisions and being
maybe
responsible
play
for
my
our own
video
safety.
games first, because that could be one of the
And
choices.
that fatigue was
Then
so
the
clear in
child
the kids in
learns
their early
natural
20s.
consequences on their own.
And
They
I
may,
think,
so it's a lovely
I
way
think
of
it's so
looking
important
at
for us to
when you
remember
give a
that
child
because
choice.
in your, it's one of the
2
reasons you
or
do what you
3
do.
healthy,
You
safe
help people. We
choices.
go back
One
to
of the
that
best things you
foundation
can
of
do.
safety, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Appreciate
If you
that. That's
don't
exactly
have
right.
that safety,
And I
that
especially
physical
appreciate
safety,
again
which
and
in
again, and
all
come
of
back to
us is
do the work,
about,
get the training.
I say this again, it's in my books,
So,
home is where we start from.
please, on your
And if the
deathbed
home environment
don't
is safe,
be able to
whether
say
that
you spent more
home
time learning
is
that one
a tent
katana
with a
trick
family
than you
because
did
we're on
on
a
learning how to
camping
communicate with your
adventure, a
kids.
hotel room because we're traveling,
Just saying.
a car, or the
And on that
physical
topic, Doctor,
residence where
I
everybody
don't want to take up
lives.
too much of your Saturday
When
afternoon,
we
and we've
feel
been chatting
safe
for an
at
hour. I feel like we could
we
chat
can
for a
pretty
while.
much
Yeah.
But
face
before we wrap
the
up,
outside world.
where can folks
Anything
find
that
you?
comes at us. When we feel connected to our
Okay,
partner,
so
to whomever's there.
You can find
And the
me
kids will
on
pick up
TikTok,
on
Dr.
that. When
Carla
we create
Manly,
that safe place at
Instagram
home.
at Dr.
It doesn't
Carla
mean it
Manly,
will be
Facebook
perfect.
at Dr. Carla Manly.
Things
My
happen, people
website
have
is Dr. Carla
disagreements,
Manly.
but it means
My
that
books,
people
which are
know
behind me and on my website,
that they will
Dr. Carla
not
Manly,
be so
and
kicked out,
publishers,
unloved,
familiars,
found unworthy,
and
all
I
of those
really
things
just
rejected.
want to impress
They
on
know
listeners as well
home
that if
is
you
a safe
want some
place.
free worksheets
And to me,
to
that is
get
the
your self-work
underpinning
journey
of
started,
what
your
makes
communication
people
journey
have
started,
that
go to
safest
the
family on the
toolkit
block.
section on my website.
I
Free
absolutely agree.
downloads.
Now,
You don't
I
have
kind of
to
want to
enter in
just
your
a little, because we
information
spent the
anywhere,
last
do
10 minutes
anything.
or
You just
so
download
having
it
a
and
conversation
do
that could
some
sound like
self-exploration.
we're
And
supporting the
once you get
top-down, my way
the
or the
hang of
highway
it, it's very
authoritarian
fun.
parenting
And
that
the
we both
last thing
disagree with.
is, if
So what are
something
some
is
hints
new to
about
you,
establishing those boundaries
self-awareness
that
is new to
create that,
you,
yeah,
I
I'm in
have
charge and I'm taking
developed
care of you
really
until you're
great
ready to be in
cards. They're
charge,
called the Imperfect Love
without,
Relationship and
what
Oracle
would we
cards.
say,
And what they
as
help
it
you
were.
do, and it can help your
I
kids
think
do,
it's
is learn
really
the
important,
connection
Jason, when we
between your
look at
feelings,
this, to
your
realize
thoughts, your mindset,
that
your energy, and your
children
actions
are evolving
Why
and
is
going
that
through
so
developmental
important?
stages.
Because we can
And
change
with
the
every
outcome of our
development
developmental stage,
catch ourselves,
we need to
before
adjust
acting.
for that
So if we're
stage. Feeling
physically
child is
angry,
able to take
so that's a
on
feeling.
more.
the thought
where
might
we as
come,
parents tend to muck it up a bit is if we go over here to complete free range parenting,
mindset may be
like
big
no
and
controls,
fierce, which is
and then the
more
outcome
appropriate
is
to be
going to
sort
be
of an
something
in
we
and
have to
out thing as a
regret. We yell
child.
at
You know, it's
somebody,
you give
we
them,
throw
but
something.
no,
And
it's
when
free
we
range
learn
and
to
just letting
capture
go
that,
of
it's the same with
letting go of the
sadness,
child.
fear, anxiety,
That's
all
healthy.
of them.
But being
We
over
learn
here
that
and
interplay
saying
and
my
learn to
way or
work
the
that
highway,
interplay.
that very
It makes
top-down
none of our
approach,
feelings
we
good
actually
or
don't ever
bad.
want to
None
be
of
doing
them are
that. We do
bad.
a bit
Anger's not
more
bad.
of that
We
when a
just
child
learn
is
how
just
to
born,
transmute it
because but
into
we're
an
still not
outcome
really
that
doing
is
it
really
because if we're doing
healthy.
healthy parenting,
And I'll
we're
grab,
paying attention.
I think,
I
yeah, I have a
is the
set
child
right down
sure,
here.
it might work better
And
for
this
me to
is
feed the
what they
child,
look like.
you know, 3 times
And
a
you get
day
to play
or
with
once,
them.
twice
You
a
get
day.
to pull them
But
out. The
and
child is showing
notice,
when it's
you know,
crying,
mindset,
I'm
energy, feelings,
hungry,
thoughts,
and it's
tired,
really a
I'm,
fun
you know, my
way.
diaper needs
I
change.
was
Something.
playing with them
So
with
the
a couple
idea
of my
is
friends,
to use that
and
template
they
as
said, "Oh
a
my God, we're going to blow
child
through this deck right
is
away."
growing.
The first
to
is
see,
we
okay,
pulled,
the
we
child's
talked about
wiggling or
for
crying
2
for
what do you
hours.
need?
Wow.
And
Now,
so
if the
I
child
admit
is
that these
3
friends
and is
happen to be
asking for a
very
lollipop, but
philosophical.
they haven't,
So somebody
you know,
else might spend,
eaten
10
any
minutes, 5
protein
minutes
during the
talking
day,
about a carb.
is that
But
lollipop
they're
inherently
non-judgmental,
bad?
and what they
Well,
do is they
no,
do
but we want to
help
make
you
sure they
create
have
that safe
at least some
internal
breakfast, some
space
lunch, and some dinner,
where
and maybe an
this
occasional
last
lollipop. So
piece,
it's when
some of it's
parents
just
often,
inherent
today's
wisdom,
world's really
but we
frenetic,
want
it's
to
really scary.
realize that
Often,
if we don't
we
work
get
on
into
that's why I
doom
keep going
scrolling,
back to
watching
doing
the
the
news, going
self-work.
down these
If
rabbit
we don't
holes
work on
that
our
make us even more
issues,
scared,
then we may
and
give
then
into
we
the
leak
child
that
because we
energy
want the
out onto
child
our
to love
kids.
us.
Yeah.
We may want to
What
not deal with the
self-work
child
does,
crying.
like
We may
these
be mad at
cards,
our
or
partner
breathing,
and
or
want to then
yoga, or
befriend the
going for a
7-year-old
walk.
and make the
It helps
7-year-old
you
our friend. We're not
process your
doing our
anxiety,
work.
your
So
sadness, your
what
fear,
we
your
do,
anger. If we're
so that
paying
when you
attention to
come
our
to your
own
own
kids
inner
or your
world and our
partner,
own boundaries,
you can describe
then we
it. You're not
realize
in it
that we
anymore. You're
are
not leaking it out
modeling
onto
that
other
for
people. The
You're able to
kid,
say, and when the
I'm
kid
feeling
wants
really
something, we
anxious.
reflect.
I heard about a
We
school
say,
shooting,
I hear
in
that
you
you
the
want to
next state
stay
over,
up till
and I'm
10
really
and have your phone
concerned.
in
So I
your
just
bedroom
wanted you
with
to
you.
know
But
that
I
I do
do
feel
the phone
anxious.
gets
This is
checked,
how I dealt
with it. I
by
took a
the
walk
kitchen
around the
door,
block,
and that's
and
where
then
it
I decided
stays.
that this is my
And
action plan.
and
That's
so
the
when
rule.
we
Well, why, Mom? Why do I need
self-stabilize,
that?
which comes
You
from being
need that because
self-aware,
you need
we
good
show up
sleep.
for ourselves and our
And
loved
so
ones
when we
in such
have
better
these
ways.
firm,
And
consistent
you know what? It's
guidelines
really
on some of
interesting
the
that
basics,
there's a
then we're
through line in a lot
able
of
to give
folklore
the
from a lot of
child more
cultures about
autonomy
how
on
if you
other
know the name
things.
of a
One of the
demon, you
things
can
that
control
is
it and
so
make it do
powerful
what
is
you
the
want.
power of
I don't believe in
choice.
demons, but
As
man,
we're
it works for
helping a
emotion.
kid build autonomy at
Wow, does
any
it work for
age,
emotions?
instead of saying,
Yeah, it helps
eat
us
your
put up that
carrots,
stop
eat your
sign at
peas, if you
least
say,
and
hey,
say, oh, my
you can
anger's
have
here. It's
for
here
your
on a scale of
vegetables,
0 to
carrots,
10.
peas, or
What
broccoli.
do I want to do
Which
with
would
that
you
anger?
prefer?
So absolutely,
What
when
are
we
you,
know,
what are you doing?
I know
You're
what you're talking
building
about, that demon
sense
energy, and we
of
can just talk about it like
self-mastery,
energy,
of
anything that takes us
autonomy.
over.
Then when it
It
comes time
can
for
be
their
anything.
studying, you
So
can
yeah,
say,
I
hey, it's
agree
time
with
to do
you.
the study. I
And
invite people to reach
eat a
out
snack
if
first
somebody
or
wants to
studying it?
have a
Then the
psychological
child is
question
used to
addressed on
not
my
only
podcast.
listening,
My
get
podcast
this,
is
but
based
they're
on
listening
listeners'
to
real
their
life questions.
needs.
They can
They
send
know
me an
you'll honor their
anonymous
needs when
question through
possible.
my website,
And then they
and
have
I can
that
talk about
chance
it on a
of
future
seeing, well,
episode.
if I
So that's one of
choose
the
to
ways that
study now,
you and I are
rather
both in a
than,
lot of
trying to
maybe
do a
playing my
lot of
video
good for the
games
world. And it's
first,
one of the ways I
because
try
that
and
could
give
be one
back.
of the choices.
And
Then
folks,
the
yeah, I've
child
listened to her show.
learns
I've been on her
natural
show. And
consequences
yeah,
on their
if you have
own.
any questions at
They
all, reach
may,
out to
so
her.
it's
Please
a
do find Dr.
lovely way
Manly
of
out there in the
looking at
world.
when
Thank you,
you
Doctor,
give
for
the
coming on
child
today. Thank you,
choice.
everybody, for watching.
2 or
Stay
3
safe. We'll see you next
healthy,
time.
safe.
The best time to make your family safer is yesterday. The second best is right now. So take a minute to identify one thing you learned from this interview that you can take action on today, and another you can make a longer-term project. Speaking of action, if I earned it today, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'm not sure why it helps as much as it does, but it's absolutely essential for a growing channel like this one. one. If you'd like to support this mission even more deeply, you can sign up for a newsletter and bonus content free over at our Patreon. You'll find the link here. As always, thanks for listening. Stay safe. See you next time. The best time to make your family safer is yesterday. The second best is right now. So take a minute to identify one thing you learned from this interview that you can take action on today, and another you can make a longer-term project. Speaking of action, if I earned it today, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'm not sure why it helps as much as it does, but it's absolutely essential for a growing channel like this one. If you'd like to support this mission even more deeply, you can sign up for a newsletter and bonus content free over at our Patreon. You'll find the link here. As always, thanks for listening. Stay safe. See you next time. The best time to make your family safer is yesterday. The second best is right now. So take a minute to identify one thing you learned from this interview that you can take action on today, and another you can make a longer-term project. Speaking of action, if I earned it today, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'm not sure why it helps as much as it does, but it's absolutely essential for a growing channel like this one. If you'd like to support this mission even more deeply, you can sign up for a newsletter and bonus content free over at our Patreon. You'll find the link here. As always, thanks for listening. Stay safe. See you next time.